but this one's going to be really quite simple, but we're going to use some fictitious data to propagate kind of a real life scenario where you might want to introduce sorting or filtering into your app. And traditionally this works fine with HTML, but normally when you do it, at least with Rails, it's all about the parameters set forth in like the link you're clicking. So that basically says when I click a certain link, it'll pass some sort of parameter that I can then redirect to the database query that's in the backend with Rails and formulate like a URL that ultimately returns the data in the format I want. Maybe it's a different order, maybe it's like sorted by a certain criteria, etc. You can actually see the URL in my bottom browser window there. So the link itself is linking to where we want, but the little sprinkle on top is just turbo powered links. So it's real reactive. The URL you notice up here doesn't respond to like that same URL that you saw in that little preview. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's down that little gray part. But like normally in the HTML world, before Turbo or Hotwire was a thing, this would be just what you'd see in the URL, and you could actually share that, and it would probably work for someone else who's using the app the same way. But now you can kind of go a little step further, improve some performance speed, or at least the impression of that, and then just serve things up a little quicker from my perspective. So this isn't like a wowzer of a tutorial, but it's more just like little enhancements you can make and sprinkle into your app that just already leverage some Turbo stuff that's built in. So I wanted to walk you through that and then just show you a little example here. Browser, my code editor. I have little Turbo frame tags surrounding essentially all of this stuff that is in this block here on the index, and then we're just looping through quotes, and these are Dumb and Dumber quotes. I don't know if you watched that movie, but I've always called it a favorite. So if you didn't like that one, sorry, but it's okay. It's just data here that we need to do this, and I have this little helper method I created behind the scenes that's passing through some parameters to our controller that is responding based on an order format, and we're passing like a typical column that's in the app that we've added to a quote model, and then a param direction to dictate if that order is ascending or descending. And that's kind of built into the active record stuff. I do have other videos on active record, kind of foundational stuff. Go check those out if you're not sure what I'm talking about. But this is assuming you've had a little experience with Rails so far. The thing I wanted to get across here though is if you were to go into, say, remove this tag, the turbo frame tag that comes with Rails, you'll notice the URL is actually going to update up here to include the query and then also just like the column ascending, descending format. And that's fine. That's totally, usable. And it's honestly just as fast as you can see. So there's not like a crazy enhancement here, but behind the scenes Turbo is just a little bit different. It does things up in the request cycle. It's one way to enhance it a little further. So it almost feels like a single page app, as they say. So let's build this real quick. It's going to take, I used an actual gem to propagate this data, so you don't worry about typing all this. And then I'll try to speed through the HTML stuff here too, just so we're not taking our entire day. I might even copy this. Let me go into my folders here, quit this app that I had, and I'll go back a level. I have a tutorials folder, and I'm going to do Rails new, let's see, turbo quotes or something. And I like to use Tailwind, so I'll pass Tailwind CSS. I think it's just Tailwind. And then /j esbuild. It's kind of my default go-to. You can use what you want there, or even just the defaults. Okay, so with that installed, I can go ahead and add the gem we're going to leverage for this fake data. It's going to be called Faker. So I'm going to do a bundle add Faker, and it'll go fetch like the latest version of that and add it to your gem file. That is a handy little one-liner to me, is to do the bundle add thing. Is a scaffold quote, and it's going to have 3 columns that I'm calling it for now. These aren't going to be like mapped correctly just because of the nature of the Faker gem, but in a real world setting, you'd add these, one by one and add the correct author and character. So this is pertaining to like a specific movie, perhaps. So I use Dumb and Dumber for this one, since there's an actual Dumb and Dumber little library within the Faker gem. So you can use anything else in the Faker gem or whatever you feel like doing. So we have a quote, a character, and I did that wrong actually. Let's do actor. and generate that. If it gives me an error, no, it doesn't. I caught it in time. So it generates all that junk. We don't need most of it, but that's okay. This is just a tutorial, of course, so take it for what it is. Next thing I want to do is essentially just get some data into the app. We won't have anything really to look at yet. Even booting up the server is kind of pointless at this point. So we'll get into the code editor. In the DB folder, there is going to be a seeds file, and that's just a way for you to like programmatically generate data for testing or development purposes. So what I'll do is actually do that programmatically using our Faker gem and Ruby. So we'll say for 20 times, we'll create a new quote that will have a quote, character, and an actor, and we'll add data using the Faker gem. So we'll say Faker, the class of Faker, and then another class of TV shows. I don't know why they call it a TV show really, but it's a movie. But Dumb and Dumber. And I'll just do quote, comma, and we can carry that forth for the character. Same thing, just call it character. And actor. So I format it like that, and at that point you can just see the database. So there's a little command with Rails that allows you to do that. It's just Rails db seed, and it should run that. If nothing happens, usually that's fine, or it says this, you'll need to run migrate. So Rails db migrate is your next best step. So Rails db migrate, and then I'll run db seed 20. And if you wanted to like see in real time stuff that happens, you could throw like a put statement here, just something random, whatever you wanted to put, just to see it happening as you run that. I mean, if you want to verify, we could say dot last, and there's one there. So stuff's created. We do have, you see the ID is 20, so that means it's done 20 times at this point. So that's great. So we've got data to work with. Now we can move on to like getting essentially the view set up, which is going to be most of the turbo stuff. The controller code will come a little bit later, even though it's a one-liner. So I'll start there and set forth on that path. The index is the main thing we're going to work on. I have this new quote form and stuff on the old app. It's not live now, but it's honestly not necessary. You can add that on your own. I'll save you some time and boredom probably watching me do it. So I'm going to pull up the old file. We'll honestly copy this in, and I'll go through it just so you can see what's going on. So essentially we've got our Tailwind stuff. This is all just basic Tailwind classes. I've got a dark mode for some reason. I went that far. But the TurboFrame tag is the one to really pay attention to. Like I said before, this can all be done with HTML. You really don't need Turbo. Rails has been able to do this for years, but the Turbo gives it a nice little effect of just being reactive, and it feels like a single page app without that URL parameter stuff going on. So this is probably like a lackluster Turbo tutorial, but it's just something just to show you like a day in the life of real things you could be doing with your index tables or sortable data as you needed to. So the key thing to see here mostly is the links. So we've got a character link and a quotes path, and inside the quotes path I'm passing parameters. So any kind of link can pass whatever you want through to it, and from those you can dictate something that happens on the back end. So, or it can be, it could be anything really, how that works, because that's essentially being previewed through the URL as a new parameter. So when we go through and click one of these links, you could see what's happening in a param like we normally do in Rails apps. So for now I'll filter out these filter arrows. That's just a little nice highlight so you know what's going on. But essentially in the direction variable, I've added a quotes helper, and that's going to have a little definition called direction, and we'll just do that as a shorthand. But it will be a params direction, which will be something we'll pipe through to the controller, and we'll just say if it's equal to ascending, we want it to swap out to descending, so it's the inverse every time you click on it. That way you can toggle between the two at any which moment. And then while we're here, I'll go ahead and add the other method I made that's called filter arrow. And that's just a way to visually see the difference as opposed to kind of reading the data and hoping and praying you know what's going on. So we'll say if params column exists equals the column we're passing, then we have another conditional params direction equals, say, ascending. Then we'll have, I did these as HTML character codes, so it would be and ampersand pound 8659 semicolon. Then I did this little helper method called HTML safe, which allows Rails to render that without any issues. And then I'll do an else. And so these are just little arrows that I didn't feel like adding as real icons, so I did it with code. All right, so what's going on here is when you're clicking that link, if nothing's present yet, maybe you never clicked a link, we'll check and see if a column exists. And on that link, we're passing through a column. So in our case, we've got a character attribute. And if you recall, when we made the quote character, we have a character column. So that can literally be piped through into our controller as a where, like an order by statement kind of thing. So just to make that a little more visual, let me go into our controller now and show you what I mean. So right now we're just passing quote.all to the app. And that's useful, I guess, if you want to just see everything as it is, as it's created. But I like to do an order statement typically on this. And then in our case, since we're going to do the parameter option, you could do params and then pass that column attribute I just showed you. And then additionally, if there is a direction attribute, which we check for, we can pass that. So that's going to hook up and query for those two things. And you can make it dynamic in that way. So you have a little space in between here. So it can be order by the column and then the direction. So it would say maybe the column's character, and then it would be ascending. So you could do that in real time. And these little methods here are helping us with that. So now you can see there's that shorthand direction method that's piped back. That's a helper method. And then we're passing rigid character. You could probably extract that into something that's a little more change it once as opposed to have it scattered throughout your views, but that might be in a model or something. And then here we're doing the same with the quotes path. It's all going back to the index path as a GET request. So these are links that's just pulling back data, and we're passing this appropriate column and then the appropriate direction coming through. So the reset filter is just the same thing. We're just going straight back to the quotes path. It's going to, by default, since there's no params passed to that link, it's going to be empty when we come back to that URL. So that resets it. It's kind of a, without like any kind of JavaScript kind of stuff that you might be used to. So let's boot this up. Bin dev is the Rails server. Boot this. Load the page. I need to add the routing still, which should be easy. So we'll go to config routes, and there's resources quotes already since we did that scaffold. So all you need to do essentially is just to say quotes index if you want it to be your index, and there we go. So this is the stuff that's there at the moment. I don't have the quote coming through that looks maybe like the demo I'll show you. Get that code going. So in the actual quote partial, we can have a nicer looking UI, or at least just something that's like obvious in this case. So in the strong class, we can have a dynamic class that's relative to the character. So we'll say text blue for that. And we'll say if params column equals character. There we go. And I think I need, there we go. So we'll do the same in this case for actor. And this is just to highlight the difference as you're sorting or filtering. So we'll say teal in this case, and then make sure this is actor. All right. Now we've got the DOM ID here already on the individual quote. So you could go through and add like an edit button here and have that respond to Turbo directly if you want to, since it's in this Turbo frame tag. So if you really wanted to, that'd be fine. You could just say edit. Let's see. Edit quote. I don't know why you would, but edit quote path, and we'll pass the quote through to that so we know which one. And because that's in a turbo frame tag, let's see if it's going to render here. Yeah, there's the button. I was like, where is it? Let's do an underline class. All right, so if we click that, it's going to say content missing. If we go into our source, we can see why. Edit as HTML. Let's see why was it missing? HTML application should pipe through, right? Oh, I know why. We need the turbo frame tag here. Tag. Oh, we need to do DOM ID actually, and we'll say on the quote will be quote. So we could just pass quote through. And I'll just render the form for now. It's not going to look good or anything, but this should, I believe, fix that problem. Let's do another turbo frame tagged. So instead of putting that DOM ID on the whole quote itself, for now I just did it on the edit button because we're piping through what would be the form. And in Tailwind, this form is completely not looking good. So it's just one of those things where, I mean, if I just do some padding here, maybe to show you the border padding. I don't know, something quick just to show you what I mean. All right, so if you click this edit, you'll get those back. This is just what we see here, and you can update those in real time. So that's the turbo magic going on, and you just would need that turbo frame tag to update and add in real time. Make sure on your edit view, in this case, that's corresponding to the same quote and DOM ID attribute. So we're doing that there, and then also on the quote itself. So that's kind of a way you could do that. If you need it to be more unique, you just maybe interpolate and change it to something more unique. So you could do another DOM ID back where we had it before. Up to you. I'm just literally doing this on the fly just to show you some ways to improve this. But at this point, our character links should be working. We've got, I think it's sorted by the character name at this point. So first name, I believe, maybe the last name, I'm not sure. And then by the actor, and then you could click it twice. All right, I think I had a typo. So this was clicking and it wasn't going back to the descending link, as we can see here. So now we're getting the last, I think the first name is where we're going by as far as direction goes in order. So here's actor. So you can see I highlighted those as you click, and if you wanted to reset the links, you could do that. Now you can add a little edit button if you want that in real time. All those cool little things with Turbo are now in your arsenal, just by passing a few Turbo Flame tags around, and passing some dynamic attributes to your ordering class. Now there's plenty of performance enhancements you can make to this, and of course plenty of Turbo enhancements you can make. But I wanted to just show you the quick little sprinkles you can add as you're going through your apps, and getting things a little more fine-tuned as you build them. So hope that was helpful. More to come, obviously more probably exciting stuff to come. So that's just some foundational stuff you could start to use Turbo for if you're new to it. All right, see you in the next one.